I want to start today by putting you in a very specific, and I think very uncomfortable, pair of shoes. Imagine for a second it is 1935.
Okay.
You are standing on the docks of New York City. You're about 30 years old.
Mhm.
And behind you, across the entire ocean, the shadow of Nazi Germany is just swallowing Europe.
And you've left everyone.
Everyone. You have left your wife, your child, your mother. Absolutely everyone you know is back there.
And you've got nothing in your pockets.
Basically nothing. No money, no real connections. And here is the real kicker. You know exactly 3 words of the English language.
Take a chair.
That's it. Take a chair. It's so absurd. It's not hello. It's not where's the bathroom.
Not even I'm hungry.
Nothing useful. Just take a chair. And yet this man who arrives feeling like a ghost, writing in a language that the entire world was screaming was dead or dying.
Yiddish.
Yiddish. He didn't just survive. He didn't just scrape by. He conquered the absolute pinnacle of the literary world.
It's genuinely one of the most unlikely success stories in the history of art, really.
Yeah.
We're talking about a man who became the only American Nobel laureate in literature to have written primarily in a language other than English.
We're talking, of course, about Isaac Bashevis Singer. And the more I read about him for this deep dive, the more I realized he is just this walking paradox.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just think about the content for a second. He wrote about shtetls, these tiny, muddy, poverty-stricken Jewish market towns in Eastern Europe that literally do not exist anymore.
They're gone. Wiped out.
He wrote about demons, possession, rabbis, ritual slaughterers, ancient superstitions.
And yet somehow by the 1960s and 70s, he's a massive celebrity in modern secular rock and roll America.
Yes. He's getting published in Playboy magazine. Right next to the centerfolds, he's in the New Yorker alongside John Updike and John Sheedy.
Which is just, it's a bizarre image.
That is the part that just blows my mind. You have this guy who looks like a confused grandfather writing about debucks and imps, and he's sitting at the cool table with the American literary elite. How does that even happen?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? I think the mistake people make is thinking that Singer became famous by adapting to America. He didn't.
Right. He didn't try to write the great American novel.
Not at all. He became famous by diving so deep into his own specific vanished world that he hit something universal. He basically drilled down into the folklore of Poland and somehow found the modern condition of loneliness.
And he did it with a style that I don't think people expect if they haven't read him. I think there's this Fiddler on the Roof vibe associated with Yiddish literature.
Oh, for sure. The sentimental tradition kind of thing.
Exactly. Cute, heartwarming. But Singer, his stuff is wild. It's full of sex. It's full of legitimate horror, deep moral ambiguity, and people doing really terrible things to each other.
Oh, absolutely. Forget Fiddler on the Roof. Singer is more like Dostoevsky meeting the brothers Grimm in a dark alley.
Laughs.
That's a great way to put it.
He wrote about a world where God is silent, but the demons are very, very loud.
So that's our mission today. We are going to try and figure out how Isaac Bashevis, Singer-born Isker Singer, went from being a rabbinical seminary dropout in Poland to a Nobel Prize winner in Florida.
And we have to unpack his whole idea of private mysticism, his extremely controversial views on vegetarianism.
Oh, we're definitely getting to that. And his complex, often really angry relationship with God.
And we have to talk about the brother. You cannot understand Isaac without understanding the shadow of his brother.
Absolutely. We will definitely get to the brother. But let's start at the very beginning, the origin story. Because Singer always said he grew up in the kitchen of literature.
He did. He was born in Poland in a village called Leoncin. Now, the date itself is a bit of a moving target. He usually told people he was born on July 14th, 1904.
But that wasn't true.
Probably not. Most biographers and historical evidence, they point to November 11th, 1903.
So why lie about it? The theory, and it's a pretty strong one, is that he fudged the date later in his youth to make himself appear younger to avoid the military draft.
Okay.
If you were a certain age, you got pulled into the army, and for a young Jewish boy in Poland at that time, that could be a death sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, 1903 is likely the real year.
But regardless of the exact date, the atmosphere in that house, and it just defined everything he ever wrote, it really feels like he was living in a house divided against itself.
That is the perfect way to describe it. To understand his writing, you just have to look at his parents. On one side, you have his father, Pinchas Mendel.
He was a Hasidic rabbi.
Yes, and when we say Hasidic, we mean
Yeah.
this is intense mystical piety. His father lived almost entirely in the spiritual world. He believed in miracles. He believed that if you prayed hard enough, God would literally provide your daily bread.
He wasn't interested in money or worldly news.
None of it. He was a man of faith, pure and simple.
And then you have the mother, Bashev.
Right? Bashev or Sheba. And she came from the same world. She was the daughter of a rabbi. But her personality was the polar opposite. She was rational. She was intellectual. She was deeply skeptical.
So while the father was praying for a miracle,
The mother was looking at the empty cupboard and asking, okay, but how are we actually going to eat? She was the realist, the anchor to the physical world.
and Isaac takes his pen name from her, Bashevis. It literally means son of Bashev.
It does. And you have to pause and think about how significant that is. In the traditional Jewish society of that time, everything is patrilineal. You are Isaac, son of Pinchas Mendel.
Right.
But he chooses, publicly, to identify himself by his mother.
Why do you think he did that? Was it a kind of proto-feminist statement, or was it just that he felt closer to her skepticism?
I think it was a deep acknowledgement that his artistic soul came from her. His father gave him the subject matter, the demons, the faith, the Torah, all the
The
folklore.
raw material.
Exactly. But his mother gave him the perspective, the critical eye, the ability to stand back and question all of it. His writing is really just a battlefield where his father's mysticism is constantly at war with his mother's skepticism.
And he never resolved that war.
He just wrote it down for 50 years.
And this war wasn't just theoretical, it played out in their living room. In 1908, the family moves to Warsaw, to Krukmana Street. Now, I looked up descriptions of Krukmana Street in the early 20th century. It wasn't exactly Park Avenue.
No, it was the heart of the Jewish slums. It was loud. It probably smelled of boiled cabbage and unwashed bodies. It was incredibly crowded. But for a young writer,
It was a gold mine.
absolute gold.
Yeah.
Because his father wasn't just a rabbi who led prayers in a synagogue.
Mm.
He was a dayan,
Right.
an unofficial judge.
Right. What does that mean exactly?
It means that in these communities, people didn't go to the Polish police or the secular courts if they could avoid it. It was alien, often anti-Semitic. They came to the rabbi.
So, the Singer apartment at number 10 Krukmana Street became a courtroom. And little Isaac is just the fly on the wall.
He's hiding under the table or listening from the next room. And just imagine what he heard. It wasn't just dry theology. It was messy, raw, human drama.
Right.
A woman comes in claiming her husband is sleeping with the maid. A merchant claims his partner cheated him out of a bolt of cloth. A mother is weeping because her daughter wants to run off with a socialist, a revolutionary.
This is the raw material for his memoir, In My Father's Court.
Yes, and what he saw there day in and day out was the collision of the holy and the profane. He saw his father trying to apply these ancient, rigid black and white laws of the Torah to the messy, dirty, chaotic gray lives of people on the street.
He learned early on that human nature doesn't fit neatly into religious boxes.
Not even close. But then the outside world breaks in. World War I starts. And that stability, even in poverty, it just shatters. The family gets split up.
This was a time of real hardship, of starvation in Warsaw.
Terrible. So to survive, Isaac's mother took him and his younger brother to her hometown, a place called Biogarash, and this becomes the second crucial location in his mental map.
And how was Bigaraj different from Warsaw?
Well, Warsaw was a city. It had newspapers, political parties, modernity was creeping in at the edges. Biogarash was a true shtetl. It was like stepping back into the Middle Ages.
So less politics and more
Folklore, much more. It was a place of timeless tradition, of deep, deep superstition. This is where he soaked up the stories of imps hiding in the cellar, or debucks possessing brides on their wedding day. He realized that the old world wasn't just a physical place, it was a mindset.
So in Warsaw, he sees the modern Jewish struggle. In Bigaraj, he sees the ancient Jewish soul.
Precisely. And he lived there for several very formative years. So because he had lived in both the city and the village, he could write about both. He could write a story about a cynical intellectual in a Warsaw cafe, and the next day write a story about a demon in a 17th century hamlet. He had both worlds inside him.
Okay, so he has the setting. He has the central conflict from his parents. But we have to talk about the catalyst. We cannot tell Isaac's story without talking about Israel Joshua Singer.
We really can't. You can't. Israel Joshua was his older brother by about 10 years. And in the Singer household, Israel Joshua was, well, he was a supernova.
So paint that picture for us,
What do you think?
because Isaac, by all accounts, is this shy, red-headed, skinny kid. Who is Israel Joshua?
Israel Joshua was tall, handsome, supremely confident, and a complete rebel. He was the first one to look at their father's intensely religious world and just say, No thank you.
He broke away.
Completely.
Yeah.
He cut off his sidelocks, he put on modern clothes, he became a secular writer, and not just any writer, he became famous. A big deal in the Yiddish literary scene.
So Isaac is watching his big brother become a kind of rock star.
Exactly. Isaac worshipped him. He was his mentor, his idol. But can you imagine the pressure? You want to be a writer, but the position of the writer in the family is already taken by this larger-than-life figure.
And Isaac, he didn't exactly launch with the same kind of success.
No, not at all. In fact, Isaac spent his early 20s feeling like an absolute failure. He tried to please his father by enrolling in the Tuchkamoni Rabbinical Seminary in Warsaw.
How did that go?
Disastrously. He hated it. He hated the food. He hated the rigid schedule. He hated what he saw as the hypocrisy there. He dropped out pretty quickly.
Okay, so plan B?
Plan B was trying to make a living, giving Hebrew lessons. He wasn't good at it. He was poor. He was terribly shy, socially awkward. He described himself during this period as essentially a ghost, just drifting through life.
So how does he get from drifting ghost to published author?
The brother again. It's a classic nepotism hire. In 1923, Israel Joshua gets Isaac a job as a proofreader for a literary magazine in Warsaw called Literarische Blätter.
A proofreader. It's not glamorous, but it is a foot in the door.
It was the kitchen of literature he needed. He was correcting other people's grammar, sure, but he was also meeting all the important writers. He was listening to the debates. He was soaking it all in. And secretly, he was working on his own stuff.
And eventually, he starts publishing.
He wins a literary competition in 1925 for a story. And then he starts working on his first novel, Satan and Gory.
This comes out in 1933. I want to dig into this book because I feel like the title alone, Satan and Gory, tells you this isn't going to be a nice, heartwarming story. And the year, 1933, is so significant. Hitler is rising in Germany.
The context is everything. The novel is set in the 17th century, specifically the year 1666. But to understand it, you have to know what happened 18 years earlier, in 1648. The Chmielnicki uprisings.
What was that?
It was a genocide. Cossacks swept through Eastern Europe and slaughtered tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of Jews. It completely destroyed the structure of Jewish life. It left the survivors traumatized, broken, and desperate for an answer.
So the entire community is in a state of collective PTSD.
Massive PTSD. And into that void, into that desperation, steps a rumor. The Messiah has come, a man named Sabbatai Zevi. He promises that all the suffering is over, that they will be transported to the Holy Land on clouds.
And the town of Goray in the novel goes crazy for this.
They lose their minds, and this is what Singer describes so masterfully. The community stops following the traditional laws. They engage in these hysterical, ecstatic rituals. They start breaking the rules of Judaism because they believe the end of days is here, so the old rules no longer apply.
So it descends into chaos.
A frenzy of sexual license, bizarre mysticism, and even cruelty, all in the name of a false savior.
And the parallel to 1933 is just chilling.
It's undeniable. Singer's writing this as he watches the rise of Nazism, and you could also argue the rise of communism, these massive totalitarian ideologies that promised a new world but were delivering terror.
He's showing how a traumatized society can so easily slide into collective insanity.
Exactly. He's saying, look at us. We are doing it again. We are looking for a false messiah to save us. It's a terrifyingly mature book for a young writer.
It is, and it was a signal that he wasn't just a storyteller, he was a philosopher of history. But even with that success, he knew he was trapped. Israel Joshua had already seen the writing on the wall and moved to New York. He kept telling Isaac, you have to come.
The threat was real and growing every day.
And this brings us to the escape in 1935. And I want to pause here because this isn't a clean Hollywood break. He didn't load up the station wagon with the whole family.
Yeah, this is the dark stain on the biography for many people. Isaac had a partner at the time, Runia, and they had a 5-year-old son, Israel Zamir. But he didn't take them with him.
Why not? Was it money? Was it a lack of visas? Or did he just not want them?
It's complicated, and the sources are a bit contradictory. Their relationship was already falling apart. Runia was a fervent communist, and Isaac, as we just discussed, was deeply skeptical of all ideologies.
So they were politically opposed.
Fundamentally. She wanted to go to the Soviet Union, which she saw as the promised land of communism.
Yeah.
He wanted to go to America. So they split. She took the boy to Moscow. He got on a boat to New York.
He wouldn't see his son again for 20 years.
Correct. And his son, Israel Zamir, later wrote a very powerful memoir about this called Journey to My Father. It was a wound that never fully healed for either of them. Isaac carried a tremendous amount of guilt about it, but he compartmentalized it. He got on that boat alone.
So he lands in New York, take a chair, And we enter the Lost in America phase. I think we assume that because he had his successful brother there, he was fine. But he wasn't, was he?
He was miserable. You have to understand the psychological state he was in. He's in New York, a city that runs on English. He's a writer who can only write in Yiddish. And everywhere he looks, the children of Jewish immigrants are assimilating.
They're learning English, they're becoming American.
Right. He looks at his own language, the very tool of his art, and he sees a corpse.
He literally thought he was writing for nobody.
He had a massive writer's block. For roughly 5 or 6 years, he barely wrote anything of value. He was depressed, he was anxious, and he was financially dependent on his brother, which he must have hated.
So what pulls him out of that hole? What changes?
2 things happen. One is romantic, and one is tragic. The romantic one is that he meets Elma Wasserman in 1938.
And she was very different from Runia.
Totally different. She was a German Jewish refugee, very middle class, very assimilated. She didn't even speak Yiddish. But they fell in love, got married in 1940, and she became his anchor. She organized his life, she believed in him, she gave him stability.
And the tragedy.
1944. Israel Joshua Singer dies suddenly of heart attack. He was only 50 years old.
Wow. That must have been devastating. That was his rock.
It was earth-shattering. Isaac was suddenly alone in the world, artistically speaking. But strangely, it was the shock he needed. With his brother gone, Isaac felt this sudden, desperate responsibility.
The torch had been passed.
He had to carry it. He had to become the writer.
And that is when he starts writing the family mascot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the family mascot was his Declaration of Independence. It was this sprawling family saga serialized in the Jewish Daily Forward newspaper. And right out of the gate, he showed he wasn't going to play nice.
I read about the controversy with that serial. The editor was not happy.
Oh, he was furious. It wasn't just one thing. There's a famous scene where the protagonist engages in adultery, double adultery, actually on the night of Yom Kippur.
On Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement.
The holiest night of the Jewish calendar. You're supposed to be fasting and praying for your life, and his characters are sinning.
That's provocative.
The editor of the Forward, a man named Abraham Kinahan, wanted to stop printing it. He said, this is filth. This is an insult to our readers.
But the readers disagreed.
The readers couldn't stop reading. The paper's circulation actually went up. They were demanding the next installment. It was scandalous, it was shocking, but it was real. It spoke to the secret transgressions that everyone knew existed, but no one ever talked about.
That was the moment Isaac Bashevis Singer truly arrived.
He wasn't just the brother of Israel Joshua anymore. He was a force of nature.
But he is still trapped in Yiddish. The Forward is a Yiddish newspaper. How does he cross that bridge into the English-speaking world? Because that is the technical leap that makes him a Nobel Prize winner.
This is a fascinating part of his process. He realized that if his work was going to live on, it had to be read in English. But his own spoken English was always heavily accented, and his written English was never perfect. So he developed a system.
What was it?
He treated translation not as a simple conversion of words, but as a recreation.
What does that mean in practice?
Well, he would hire a translator, usually a young woman, often an aspiring writer herself. They would sit together in his living room. He would hold the original Yiddish text, and he would read it out loud to her in his own rough, literal English. Something like, he walked into the room, he felt sad.
Okay, very basic.
And she would polish it. She would say, maybe melancholy is a better word here, or let's structure the sentence this way for better flow. But as they worked, Singer would change the story on the fly.
He'd edit it again.
He'd realize, this long paragraph about Jewish law, an American reader isn't going to get it. Let's cut it. Or, I need to explain this superstition more clearly.
So the English version was actually a different draft of the book, a new version.
Exactly. He called it a second original. The English versions are often tighter, leaner, and sometimes even clearer than the Yiddish originals. And here's the key. Once that English version existed, that became the source text for the French translation, the German translation, the Japanese translation.
So if I buy a Singer book in Paris today, I'm actually reading a translation of the English translation of the Yiddish.
Precisely. He used English as the gateway to the rest of the world.
And the story that kicked that door wide open was Gimple the Fool.
1953. This is the big bang moment for him in America.
So tell us the story of Dimple, because the title sounds like it could be a comedy, but it's really not.
No, it's a tragedy that feels like a folktale. Gimple is the town baker in a small shtetl.
Oh.
And he's called a fool because he believes absolutely everything anyone tells him. Anything. If the villagers tell him the Messiah is coming tonight, he puts on his best clothes and waits by the road. If they tell him his parents have risen from the dead, he runs to the cemetery to greet them.
And the town just mocks him for it. They prank him constantly.
Relentlessly. They decide to marry him off to the town tramp, a woman named Elka. She is pregnant when they get married, and Gimbel knows it's not his child, but she convinces him it was just a premature birth 4 months after the wedding.
That's a hard sell even for Gimple.
But he accepts it.
Yeah.
He catches her with other men, and she always talks her way out of it. He chooses to believe her. And as you're reading, you're just sitting there thinking, you idiot, stand up for yourself, see what's right in front of your eyes.
But there's a turn.
There is. As the story goes on, you start to realize something profound. Gimple isn't stupid. He knows. He's not an idiot. But he has made a conscious choice that it is better to be a fool than to be a cynic. He says essentially, I will believe, because to not believe is to live in a world without trust, a world worse than this one.
Wow, so his gullibility is actually a form of holiness, a spiritual discipline.
Exactly. And this story, this little Yiddish folktale, lands on the desk of Saul Bellow.
Saul Bellow, future Nobel Prize winner himself, an absolute giant of American literature.
Bellow reads the story in Yiddish and is just blown away by it. He translates it himself. It gets published in the Partisan Review, which was the Bible of the New York intellectual scene at the time.
So he gets the ultimate stamp of approval.
Overnight, everyone is asking, who is this Isaac Bashevis Singer guy? When you have Saul Bellow translating you, you are not an ethnic writer anymore. You are literature with a capital L.
So now he's famous, and he starts pouring out these stories, and we need to talk about the content again because it just pushes so many boundaries. He writes about things that the Jewish community in the 50s and 60s wasn't exactly broadcasting.
He was fundamentally anti-nostalgia. He hated the idea that because the shtetl was destroyed by the Nazis, it had to be remembered as some kind of paradise of saints. He said, no, we were human. We had pimples, we had lusts, we were petty, and we were noble.
Give us some examples of the taboo stuff he was writing about.
Well, take Yentl the yeshiva boy. It's about a young woman who cross-dresses as a man so she can be allowed to study the Torah. That's a direct challenge to traditional gender roles.
And that was written when?
In the early 60s. Way ahead of its time. Or a story called Zeitel and Rickel, which deals with what is clearly a lesbian relationship, though he wouldn't use that modern term. He frames it through the lens of demonic possession and spirits, but the underlying sexuality is unmistakable.
And then there's the really demonic stuff, Zeidlus the Pope.
That's a wild one. It's about a brilliant Jewish scholar, a Talmudic genius, who is so arrogant, so obsessed with his own intellect, that the devil comes to tempt him.
And what's the temptation?
The devil says, you are too smart for these Jews, your mind is wasted here, you should be the Pope. And the man actually converts to Catholicism and becomes the Pope, not out of faith, but out of pure intellectual vanity. It's a story about how intellect without humility leads to destruction.
This connects to his whole idea of private mysticism. Because you read these stories and you have to wonder, did Singer actually believe in demons? Or were they just metaphors for the evil in human nature?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? He was asked this constantly in interviews, and his answer was always brilliantly elusive. He would say, I believe in them as literary entities, but then he'd get a twinkle in his eye and say, but I don't know that they don't exist.
He was playing with us.
A little bit. But his private mysticism was a real philosophy for him. He wasn't an Orthodox Jew in practice. He didn't really keep kosher. He didn't go to synagogue regularly. But he was certainly not an atheist.
So what did he believe?
He believed the universe was teeming with forces we don't understand. He felt that God was real, but that God was hidden, distant,
And silent.
and silent. And this brings us to the shadow of the Holocaust. Singer didn't often write about the concentration camps directly. He felt he couldn't do it justice, that it was beyond art. But the Holocaust is the background radiation of everything he wrote after 1945. And it made him angry at God.
He has that famous quote, I am angry at God because of what happened to my brothers.
Yes. His younger brother, Moshe, died somewhere in the Soviet Union. His mother died there, too. The entire world he grew up in was incinerated. So his theology became a theology of protest. He's saying, God, you created a world where the innocents are slaughtered. I will acknowledge that you exist, but I don't have to like you. I don't have to approve.
This anger at the slaughter of the innocent, it leads us directly to the most controversial aspect of his personal philosophy. Vegetarianism.
This is huge. For the last 35 years of his life, Singer would not touch meat at all.
And this wasn't for health reasons. He wasn't trying to lower his cholesterol or anything like that.
No, he had that famous line, "I did it for the health of the chickens."
Yeah.
But it goes so much deeper than just a witty one-liner. For him, it was a profound moral and theological position. He saw a direct line between the violence humans inflict on animals and the violence humans inflict on each other.
There is a quote from his story, The Letter Writer, that just stops me cold every time I read it. I want to read it here, but I have to warn you, the listener, it is heavy.
Go ahead. It's essential to understanding him.
He writes, "In relation to animals, all people are Nazis. For the animals, it is an eternal Treblinka."
Eternal Treblinka.
What is? I mean, I don't even know how to process that. He is explicitly comparing a chicken farm to a death camp. And he is doing this as a Jewish man who lost family to the Nazis. How did people react to that when he said it?
It was explosive. Many people were deeply offended. They felt it trivialized the unique horror of the Holocaust. They said, how can you possibly compare a human soul to a cow?
It's an argument you still hear today.
Of course, but Singer stood his ground. He argued that the mindset is the same. It is the belief that might makes right. The belief that because I am stronger than you and because I have the power to kill you, I have the right to do with your life as I please.
So for him, eating meat was accepting the fundamental logic of the oppressor.
Exactly. He asked a very uncomfortable question. How can we humans pray to God for mercy when we show absolutely no mercy to the creatures in our power? He saw the slaughterhouse as the ultimate proof that the world is a cruel place, perhaps abandoned by a loving God.
It's a consistent, if terrifying, worldview. The strong crushed the weak, the Nazis crushed the Jews, humans crushed the animals.
And in his stories, the demons crushed the sinners. It's all part of the same brutal cosmic hierarchy.
Given how dark and cynical that view is, it's all the more surprising that he became such a pop culture figure. But by the 1970s, he is everywhere. And then in 1978, he gets the call. Stockholm Calling.
The Nobel Prize. It was the ultimate validation, not just for him, but for the entire culture of Yiddish. He gave his acceptance speech in both Yiddish and English. He called Yiddish the language of the frightened and the hopeful. It was a beautiful historic moment. It put a stamp of eternity on a language that Hitler and Stalin had tried to wipe from the face of the earth.
And naturally, with the Nobel Prize comes Hollywood.
Enter Barbra Streisand.
We have to talk about Yentl. 1983. Barbra Streisand directs, produces, co-writes, and stars in the film adaptation of Singer's story, Yentl the Yeshiva Boy. It's a huge hit, a classic. But Singer, he hated it.
Hated is an understatement. He loathed it. He wrote an absolutely scathing review of it in the New York Times.
What was his beef? I mean, it's Barbra Streisand. It brought his work to millions of people.
Well, first of all, she made it a musical. Singer said, I did not write a story about a singing yeshiva boy. He felt the songs trivialized the intense, sacred act of spiritual study. But more importantly, he felt she completely changed the ending to be about modern women's lib, rather than what he saw as a spiritual tragedy.
In the movie, she goes off to America at the end, right?
Yeah.
To be free and study on her own terms.
Right. It's a triumphant, empowering, American immigrant ending. Papa, can you hear me? It's all very uplifting. But in Singer's original story, Yentl doesn't go to America. She wanders off to another yeshiva to keep living the lie because her soul is trapped. There's no place in the world for a woman with a man's soul.
So it's a tragedy.
A dark, complex tragedy. And Singer felt Streisand turned it into a schmaltzy, feel-good American success story.
It goes back to what we said at the start. He wasn't Fiddler on the Roof. He did not want the happy ending.
Never. He wanted the truth, and the truth, for him, is usually messy and unresolved.
He had better luck with some other adaptations, though. Enemies, a love story. That's a fantastic film.
Oh, Angelica Houston is amazing in that. And that story, that film, captures the Singer vibe perfectly. It's about a Holocaust survivor in New York who ends up with 3 wives at the same time.
It's a comedy of errors, but a deeply sad one.
Exactly. It's funny, it's tragic, and it's about how trauma destroys your ability to live a normal moral life. It's pure Singer.
And then there are the children's books, which is another pivot I just didn't see coming. Zlata the Goat.
It is strange, isn't it? The man who writes about adultery and demon popes also writes for kids. But he loved writing for children. He had this great line, children don't read reviews, they don't give a damn about the critics, they don't read to find their identity, they read for the story.
If the story's boring, they just walk away.
Exactly. He respected that honesty. And Light of the Goat, which was illustrated by the great Maurice Sendak, is a masterpiece. It's about a boy and a goat who get trapped in a haystack during a blizzard.
And they survive together.
They save each other. It's gentle. It's mystical, and it treats the animal with the same soulfulness as the human. It fits his vegetarian philosophy perfectly.
So we come to the final chapter, the 1980s. He's in his 80s now. He's rich. He's famous. Where is he living? What's his life like?
He's living in Surfside, Florida, just north of Miami Beach.
It is such a distinct image. The old Yiddish writer in a cream-colored suit walking down Collins Avenue under the palm trees.
He became a local fixture. He would sit in drugstores and eat lunch. He would walk along the beach and feed the pigeons. People would stop him and ask for autographs, or sometimes they'd ask him to solve their personal problems, just like they used to ask his father on Crook Malma Street.
The circle closes.
In a way. And he kept writing. Until the very end, he was dictating stories, writing essays for Moment magazine. But his health did fail him eventually. He suffered a series of strokes,
He lost his memory.
which, for a writer whose entire career was based on the power of memory, was the ultimate tragic cruelty.
And he passed away on July 24th, 1991.
He was 87 years old. He was buried in New Jersey in a Jewish cemetery, not in Poland, not in Israel, but here in America.
So let's try to wrap this all up. We have talked about the demons, the brother, the vegetarianism, the Nobel Prize. When you step back and look at the whole incredible picture, what is the Singer paradox?
The paradox is that he was a man made of contradictions who never tried to resolve them. He embraced them. He was a skeptic who wrote constantly about faith. He was a modernist who wrote about the past. He was a harsh realist who wrote about ghosts and demons.
He kept a destroyed world alive.
Exactly. The world of the Polish Jews, he kept it alive, not by preserving it in amber like a museum piece, but by animating it with all its flaws and passions.
He made them breathe again.
He made them breathe. He made them sin. He made them weep. He made them question God. He proved that the Jews of Poland weren't just a statistic. They weren't just the 6 million martyrs of the Holocaust. They were people. And that, I think, is the greatest memorial you can possibly build.
And for the listener today, why does this matter? Why should someone in 2026 pick up the collected stories of Isaac Bashevis Singer?
Because Singer addresses the modern condition of loneliness like almost no one else. We live in a world where a lot of the old structures are falling apart, where God feels silent for a lot of people, where we are all trying to find our own private mysticism to make sense of things. Singer charts that territory. He tells you, yes, the world is scary. Yes, we are alone. But look at how miraculous and strange and terrifying and beautiful it all is.
And he proves that you don't have to be broad to be universal.
That is the big takeaway for me. Singer once said something like, the Jews of Poland had died, but something, call it spirit or whatever, is still somewhere in the universe. He focused on one tiny, specific street in Warsaw, one vanished culture, and by doing that, he spoke to the whole world.
I want to leave you with a thought on that. We live in an era of globalization. Everything is blending. TikTok trends go global in seconds. We are often told as creators to make our stories accessible to everyone, but Isaac Bashevis Singer proves that the most specific, the most localized, the most detailed stories are often the ones that connect the deepest.
Absolutely. If you try to write for everyone, you often end up writing for no one. If you write the truth about your own Crook Malma Street, whatever that is for you, you might just win a Nobel Prize.
Maybe we all need to stop looking outward for a moment and go back to our own roots to find the real truth. That's it for this deep dive into Isaac Bashevis Singer. Thank you for listening.